Good evening and thank you for joining us. Hong Kong and Shenzhen authorities signed the cooperation arrangement on the implementation of co-location arrangement at the redeveloped Huanggang port. The Hong Kong port area will be put into service Friday, with the port's official opening date to be announced at a later time. Mimosa Ngai reports.
For the first time, the redeveloped Huanggang port opens to Hong Kong media. Among the areas made available during the press tour is the floor designed for screening Hong Kong-bound visitors. Adopting a collaborative inspection and joint clearance, these e-channels mark the boundary of Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Travelers will arrive in the Hong Kong port area by passing through the automated gates. The basement level, meanwhile, links to public transport stands catering to non-boundary crossing Shenzhen travelers taking taxis and buses. The port connects to the Shenzhen Metro via this floor as well. Once in operation, the renovated port will provide 24/7 service for passengers. A Shenzhen Municipal Government Port Office representative says authorities still need to test much of the equipment inside the building, including lifts and fire service installation, to ensure they work properly for the port's around-the-clock operation. Separately, the signing ceremony for the port's arrangement between Hong Kong and Shenzhen is held at the central government offices. Secretary for Security Chris Tan and Shenzhen's Vice Mayor Lo Huanhao signed the cooperation arrangement. An additional right-to-use agreement is signed by Deputy Secretary for Security Jocelyn Choi and Director of the Shenzhen Municipal Government Port Office Liu Huixiang. Under the right-to-use agreement, the Hong Kong government will pay the Shenzhen Municipal People's Government a nominal rent of 1,000 yuan each year. The lease will take effect Friday and expire June 30th, 2047. Tan says the Hong Kong government will continue to work closely with the Shenzhen counterparts in preparing for the port's opening, including system testing and operational and emergency drills. Mimosa Ngai, TVB News.
A new study by the Hong Kong Red Cross has found that more than 14% of Hong Kong's districts face very high disaster risk when it comes to typhoons, fires, and extreme heat. The organization is urging the government to step up community resilience. As extreme weather events become increasingly frequent, the Hong Kong Red Cross analyzed 42 indicators drawing on data from the Census and Statistics Department and the Hong Kong Observatory and Population Census records. The study assessed the city's exposure to typhoons, extreme heat, and fires, as well as each community's ability to respond. It found that more than 1 in 7 districts falls into the very high disaster risk category. For typhoon risk, parts of the North District and Yuen Long, including Pat Hong and Sha Tau Kok, were identified as particularly vulnerable because they are located farther from temporary emergency shelters.
We are facing hotter summer and also more rain. It is the time that we look at the capacity and also the risk of the city, and to have people from different sectors and different backgrounds coming together to work together to cope with this changing climate and changing needs of the community.
The report also identified Kowloon City, Sham Shui Po, and Yau Chi Mang as high fire risk districts. It estimates that more than 70% of Hong Kong residents did not take part in a fire drill over the past year, and calls on authorities to increase community fire safety exercises. For extreme heat, the study found that the highest number of hot days was concentrated in parts of the Northern New Territories. Santin and Kutong recorded 103 hot days last year. Meanwhile, parts of Kowloon were most affected by hot nights, with Hung Hom logging the highest tally at 54 hot nights. The Hong Kong Red Cross also recommends increasing the frequency of fire drills in high fire risk areas to boost community participation, while expanding the coverage of temporary typhoon shelters and continuously reviewing supporting measures and facilities. The Red Cross is calling for more targeted heat adaptation policies tailored to different neighborhoods. The stop-start fighting between the United States and Iran appears to have entered a new phase. This as Saudi Arabia joins military escalations against Tehran-backed proxies. Both sides have carried out military strikes in the last 24 hours that once again risk a return to all-out war and further expansion in the region while peace talks stall. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The US military says it has completed what it describes as a heavy wave of strikes against Iran, conducted in response to an earlier Iranian missile attack on a US base in Jordan. US Central Command says that over the span of 2 hours, they struck dozens of targets belonging to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, including military command centers, as well as missile and drone facilities and coastal surveillance and defense sites. The latest barrage came after the US partners with Saudi Arabia to strike Iran-backed militias in neighboring Iraq, killing at least 20 fighters and 6 Iranian advisors. Speaking in the Oval Office, US President Donald Trump calls the tit-for-tat strikes more of the same.
It's a little more of the same, but it's going to be straightening out. It's going to be straightening out. In the meantime, we're going to be hitting them very hard because it's our turn to hit them. They know it's coming. They're asking us not to do it, but, they tried shooting it last night. So we had 5 rockets shot going 8,500 miles an hour, and all 5 rockets were knocked down to the ground. But they nevertheless took a shot, so it's our turn. And we'll see if we get there with an agreement at some point, but we're going to hit them very hard.
The United Nations is urging all parties in the US-Iran conflict to de-escalate amid heightened tensions in the region.
Well, the Secretary General has been worried for some time that if the parties do not return to negotiations, you could have a widening of the conflict. And that seems to be what has been happening in recent hours. He has already made clear his concerns about any renewed fighting and any escalation and widening of the conflict. So these are not positive developments, and he wants to make sure that the parties can cease fighting and, again, return to the diplomatic efforts, including the mediation efforts being pressed forward by Pakistan, Qatar, and others.
Dan Earl, TV News.
Welcome back. Dr. Anthony Fauci repeatedly invokes the Fifth Amendment and declined to answer dozens of questions from senators in the Republican-led committee hearing about his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. The scientist was subpoenaed to appear before the committee by Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who has long had a fraught relationship with Fauci and led the charge, seeking that he testify again under oath. Tracy Furness reports.
Republican Senator Rand Paul on Wednesday sought to build the case that Dr. Anthony Fauci helped produce the COVID-19 pandemic by approving funding of research on virus mutations and then covered up his complicity.
The real question is, was it dangerous? Was it a wise decision to fund this? And you haven't deviated from that. You've never admitted that it could have been a mistake funding this research in China.
Fauci, a physician and immunologist who helped lead the U.S. government response to the COVID-19 pandemic, faced aggressive questioning from Republican members, especially Chairman Rand Paul. In response to angry, sometimes mocking questions from Republican senators, Fauci declined to answer more than 50 times.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
He had support from some Democratic senators.
Dr. Fauci has saved lives, as have public health officials in the United States and throughout the world. And today, we are demeaning and degrading their life-saving service. Republicans are eager to rebrand you as a villain in order to distract from their own failure to protect Americans from soaring health care costs.
Speaking from the Oval Office, U.S. President Donald Trump says he had been watching the committee hearing and he disagrees with Fauci over how the country handled the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, I watched the whole thing today, but more importantly, I was a part of the whole Fauci. I inherited Fauci. He was here from the 1980s, so I had him for a period of time. And I disagreed with him on a lot. I would have had to close down the whole country if I listened to him. I went the Federalist way, which is basically to let the governors decide. And generally speaking, the Republican governors did very well. The Democrat governors did not very well. But Fauci wanted to have nobody wearing masks, if you remember, and then everybody had to wear 5 masks, as many masks as you could get. I mean, made a lot of mistakes.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Wasn't a big factor.
The U.S. Federal Reserve left its key interest rate unchanged Wednesday, although 3 officials dissented in favor of higher rates as the central bank wrestles with how to deal with persistently high inflation. U.S. President Donald Trump praised the decision made under his hand-picked Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh.
No, Kevin's fantastic, but he's got a board. Yeah, Kevin's got a board. He's fantastic. He's a brilliant guy, smart. I know he'd love to see lower interest rates, but he's got a board, and it's a political board, and they want to keep rates up. But we fight through rates. We have the strongest investment ever made in a country, of any country.
The Fed's rate-setting committee reached its decision after 2 days of deliberations, marking the 5th straight meeting at which the benchmark rate was kept at around 3.6%. Some economists and Wall Street analysts had predicted the Fed would hike its rate by a quarter point. While the decision could be seen as good news for consumers, they might not feel much relief with the average credit card rate still near 20% and mortgage rates the highest since last August. The 3 regional Fed bank presidents who dissented, Beth Hammack of the Cleveland Fed, Neil Kashkari from Minneapolis, and Lori Logan from Dallas, had previously called for or signaled they would be open to raising rates to combat high prices. Analysts say the dissents show the Fed is not yet convinced the inflation battle has been won. Britain's Prime Minister Andy Burnham outlines plans to align technical education and training for young people with local employment needs.
I'm announcing new routes for 14-year-olds to get early access to technical education, skills training, work experience, and connections with employers, giving them the knowledge and experience they need.
Burnham's plan seeks to tackle rising youth unemployment by preparing young people for an AI-driven future. The initiative builds on efforts by previous governments to strengthen technical education, including T-level qualifications introduced under Theresa May, skills and apprenticeship reforms under Boris Johnson, and further measures under Keir Starmer. But for now, more than 1 million 16 to 24-year-olds are not in education, employment, or training. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.